Are we sold on Jared Goff being the future starting quarterback in Detroit? Dan Campbell came out yesterday, answered some questions regarding Jared Goff and his future here in Detroit. And he said, yeah, to quote unquote, yeah, I mean, I don't see why not. He's playing pretty good ball right now. And I didn't think much of it at first when I first read it. And then I kind of, did what I always do. And I dug extremely deep into this. And I said, all right, let me ask myself, do I have a problem with Jared Goff being the future quarterback of this franchise? And my immediate reaction is, yes, I do. I have a big problem with it. And then I took a step back a little bit. I took a deep breath, and I asked myself, okay, do I really have a problem with Jared Goff being the future quarterback of the Detroit Lions? And that's when I had this epiphany. And I told myself, you know what? I actually don't mind. And it's for a reason I don't think many would even say. If the Lions commit to Jared Goff long term, it would not surprise me one bit. And not only would it not surprise me, it would allow every Lions fan, media personality, whoever it may be, you would judge Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes based on their decision to move forward with Jared Goff. It's that simple. At the end of the day, you're judged by wins and losses, correct? And if they feel they can win football games with Jared Goff and they're putting out a good product, but their quarterback play is just awful, well, then you have to look at them and say, well, you botched this decision. And who knows? Could it be too late? Will they get a quarterback in the later rounds this year? Will they draft one in the first round next year? So many questions. But I may disagree with keeping Jared Goff long term. But that doesn't mean I don't have to not support it, essentially. Why? Because Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell are making that decision. And it's a decision as fans you have to accept that your head coach and GM are going to make decisions. Some of them are going to work out. Some of them aren't. That's part of the game here. But you got to nail the quarterback position. And in Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell's time here, however long it may be, if it is followed with success on the field and quarterback play, and it's attributed to Jared Goff, great. But if it doesn't work out and you struggle with Jared Goff and you're losing games again next year and you're losing in year 3 when most people logically expect you to turn it around, and then what? And then you say, oh, well, our fallback is it's Jared Goff. I don't see it long term in Jared Goff. But I can accept that ultimately Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell will be judged based on wins and losses, the talent they put out on the field, and the progress they make in their time here in Detroit. And we brought up the comparison yesterday to Dan Campbell. Jim Schwartz. Now, they're totally different people. This isn't comparing two people. This is comparing two situations. Two situations I find so interesting. I really do. Schwartz takes over an 0-16 team. Dan Campbell takes over a team that was 5-11, franchise quarterback walking out of the door, and one of the bottom 5 rosters in the NFL. And they both have a lot of work to do. And what does Dan do year 1? Well, he's at 2 wins. What did Schwartz do? 2 wins. Schwartz year 2, improved, 6-10. Next year, 6 to 7 wins is a realistic feat for the Detroit Lions if they have another offseason the way they did this past year. A little better than the free agency side, but I think you're all confident in Brad Holmes and his ability to draft, regardless of the round. So, moving into year 3, you have a 10-win season from Jim Schwartz. And is that the timeline for the Detroit Lions? And does that timeline fit with Jared Goff? Now, I know some of you are asking, what does long-term mean? Long-term is Jared Goff's deal expires in another 2 full seasons from now. Do they cut bait with him early? I don't see it. even if they draft a quarterback. Now, if they take one in the first round, that would change my mind. But they don't have one right now. And they haven't. And I don't think they do it this year. And Brad Holmes, in my opinion, and Dan Campbell have looked at Jared Goff and said, you know what? If we surround you with exponential talent, you can win us football games, which is what Jared Goff has proven he can do in the NFL. And if that's the bet that Brad Holmes and the risk that Holmes and Campbell are going to make with your football team, you have to accept it, of course, at the end of the day, because you're not making the decisions, and neither am I. But you accept it and you support it, knowing that if it doesn't work out, you have to hold them accountable. And if it works out and they win games and they win meaningful games, they win divisions, get to the playoffs, win some games, well, then you can say, and you can look at the project and say, all right, we've kind of stalled, but we've made immense progress in our franchise. And now we're just actually a quarterback away. So Jared Goff on an expiring deal, a year left, 2 years left, you pull in Alex Smith. You draft the young quarterback. You sit him for a year potentially. You could take that route that Kansas City took, or you just bring in the quarterback right away. But to me, Jared Goff is nothing more than a game manager. And guys, look at all of time. Just go back, the 2000s. Outside of Trent Dilfer, Joe Flacco, Brad Johnson, Nick Foles. I don't even consider Nick Foles honestly a game manager. I consider that a magical run. I would consider the Baltimore Ravens run a magical run. Ray Lewis's final year, Joe Flacco playing out of his mind in the playoffs, special teams scoring multiple touchdowns throughout that playoff run. So can you win on a consistent enough level? And let's forget the Super Bowl for a little bit. What does a franchise quarterback offer you? An opportunity to win the division year in and year out, let alone just compete. So you win it every other year. Great. That means in 10 years, you've won 5 divisions. That's a good thing. I think people in Detroit would really appreciate that. I really do. So from here, it gets really interesting. Can you win your division and significant games, meaning playoff time, with Jared Goff? Yes, he's proven it with Sean McVay. But that's Sean McVay. And Dan Campbell is still writing his own story. It's so early for him. So not fair to even compare him to Sean McVay at the moment. But the point is, you're going to have a pretty talented roster next year. And I don't think anybody wants to talk about that fact. Why? Because expectations scare people. You're going to have a talented roster next year. And if Jared Goff is playing like a goof, it's not a good look. You have to get a quarterback. You cannot commit to him long term. That's what I think. I don't see how it works if you commit to Jared Goff beyond his current contract. And again, I don't have to like, hate, love. It doesn't matter. I don't have to have any ill or positive feelings toward Jared Goff. It doesn't matter. It's about production and winning football games, right? But the decision, again, is not yours, nor is it mine. And at the end of the day, the people in power, Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, the front office, Sheila, they will all be held accountable for the decisions they make onward. And if that means keeping Jared Goff, great. Good for them. I hope you win. I hope you succeed. If you don't, people will be asking questions. Welcome to the business. And Lions fans, I really am curious, and I would love for you to answer in the chat. When do you expect this team to compete for the division? Realistically. What are you rooting for? Is it next year or is it the year after? If it's anything after year 3, I'm going to have a hard time buying into you. But I'm just curious. Do you actually think they compete by year 3? Isn't that the expectation? Hey, man, by year 3, we should have a talented enough roster. That's 3 off seasons, 3 drafts, correct? What are your feelings into next year and the year after? For me, 2023 makes a hell of a lot of sense. Why? I saw it with Schwartz. He took over a team that was at the bottom of the bottom. 0-16. A draft class that was not that deep. Outside of Matthew Stafford, that first round was pretty disastrous. There was maybe 1 or 2 decent players. So you got Stafford, you paired him with Calvin, but you still had a roster to build. So you won 2 games your first year, you drafted Sue, you got Fairley, you addressed the linebacker position, key free agents, and the next thing you know, you're winning 6 games, and then 10 games, and you're in the playoffs. I think the NFL is a 2 to 3 year turnaround always. The teams that do it in 1 year are typically circumstantial, but they do happen often. People forget this. They do happen often, but they are circumstantial. Sometimes teams just walk into a better situation, and coaches do. But next year, in my opinion, I think as a Lions fan, what you should be expecting is 6, 7 wins. I think that's fair, realistic, and that's a good number to hold somebody accountable for. If you think you're going to put out back-to-back 2-win seasons, you've got another thing coming. I don't care how much we appreciate the progress, how much people care about how exciting and energetic this team is. Year 2, got to win 5-6 games. And then year 3, you got to take the short step, in my opinion. I think year 3, you should be competing for the division title. I don't care who is in Green Bay. I don't care who the quarterback is. I don't care if Aaron Rodgers is still the quarterback. I don't care if the Packers are still very good. You don't win in the National Football League waiting for everybody to be bad around you so you could succeed. You succeed by building a very good roster that can compete against anyone. If that was the case, or excuse me, if that wasn't the case, do you think the Los Angeles Chargers, the Denver Broncos, the Raiders, they would be sitting there in their division knowing that they have Patrick Mahomes for the next 10, 12 years? They would just pout and sit there and say, oh, well, they got Patrick Mahomes. We'll just call it a decade. No. They're going to fight. They're going to get their own quarterbacks. And they're going to try and win football games. That's what football teams do. That's what good organizations do. So that's where we're at this morning. Do they commit to Jared Goff long term? I find it super interesting. I really do. We do have to go to break. When we get back, a new game on the show. It's called the 5-word game. 5 words to sum up a team, a season, a player, and coach for teams around and individuals around the NFL.
You've reached the end of the video. You know what you should do? Press like. You know you like the content that we have here at Woodward Sports Network. I'm Braylon Edwards from the bottom line. Subscribe to us right now.